Hello there, Kim Knight from kimknighthealth.com, and today I want to run through a really quick and easy exercise for dissolving negative emotions. And I call this my entry-level exercise for emotional transformation. But even though it's very basic, very easy, it's incredibly effective and also very, very necessary. Now, as I always say at the beginning of my webinars, please use this information at your discretion. By watching this video or listening to this podcast later, you agree to take full responsibility for how you use this information. And I do not diagnose, treat, cure, or heal any illness or person. So let's get straight into it. Why do we need to transform negative energy or negative emotions? Well, there are very simple reasons for that. Negative emotions create unhappiness, and if that excuse me, if that unhappiness goes on for long enough, it actually starts to create symptoms. I know this firsthand. I was ill for 10 years with chronic fatigue and unable to work for 10 years. And it was only after 6 years of that illness that I had my turning point light bulb moment where I understood that all the negative emotions that I'd been holding inside of me were actually what were creating the fatigue. So I didn't have a lack of energy. I actually had blocked energy. And specifically, I was blocking the emotional energy because everything is energy. Our physical body, if we magnify it down 1,000,000 times, is actually just energy. Our thoughts are energy or vibration. Our emotions are energy or vibration. And our spirit is energy and vibration. We are an energetic vibrational being. And if we hold and store and suppress and repress our emotions, that is energy, and it doesn't just disappear, because the law of physics says that energy cannot be destroyed. Energy can be transformed, which is why water can turn into steam or ice, but it can't just disappear. So if we don't deal or manage with our emotions, we don't manage our emotions, they simply stay stuck inside us, and they will create illness, and they will create more unhappiness. And so it's the suppressing of and the ignoring of the emotional energy that brings the problem. So we need to learn how to become self-masterful of our emotions. And that is one of the things that I teach. I teach emotional mastery. And most of the people that I'm working with, they come to me because they're chronically ill. All their tests may be showing up negative, but they've got chronic symptoms of pain and fatigue. And when we dig down, we find it's all about emotions. It's also about the mind and the beliefs. But a lot of the work that people are doing to clear their symptoms, all they're doing is dealing with their emotions. Now, I have many, many techniques, probably about 300 techniques to help people transform their life, to transform their emotions. This is one of them, and it's the very first, very easy, simple technique that I give clients. So, one of the things that we have to learn is the difference between emotions and thoughts. And I remember when I heard this the first time, it was quite a light bulb moment for me. So there is a difference between thoughts and emotions, and that may sound obvious, but what I'm going to share here is maybe not so obvious. You may not have thought of this before in this way. Thoughts are rational and emotions are irrational, and emotions cannot be thought away. I'll say it again. Thoughts are rational, emotions are irrational, and emotions cannot be thought away. Now that is what most people are trying to do. They get stuck in their head, and whatever issue is troubling them, it goes round and round and round, and it goes round as a story. That person shouldn't have done that, or that shouldn't have happened, or whatever it is. It goes round and round as a story in the head, thinking, thinking, thinking. But that will never deal with the thoughts. It will just keep us trapped. It will never deal with the emotions. It will just keep us trapped in those emotions. So what sort of emotions am I talking about here that we want to get rid of? Well, it's all the negative emotions such as anger, frustration, sadness, grief, disappointment, hurt, shame, guilt, betrayal. And a big one is fear. Fear tends to underlie many of these emotions, or go hand in hand with many of these emotions. So these are the sort of emotions that we don't want stuck in our body because they are literally toxic. They put our body into the stress response. They start creating stress hormones. They change the chemical makeup of literally every cell in our body. They change how our internal organs operate, and they create havoc, right? So we need to learn how to master ourselves in terms of learning how to dissolve this type of emotional energy so that instead we're building and cultivating more of the joy, the love, the peace, the respect, the kindness, the gentleness. These are the what are called virtuous energies, or positive emotions, but I like to refer to them as the Chinese philosophers do, as in virtues. These are the virtues that we want to increase. And in fact, all the good stuff is already inside of us, but if we have all this negative stuff piled on top, then we never get to experience all the good stuff, which is our innate nature. So it's like the clouds in the sky. The negative emotions are the clouds, and once you take the negative emotions or clouds away, then you have a beautiful, bright, blue, sunny, shiny sky, very clear. So that is what we're wanting to do by clearing away these toxic emotions. First of all, we feel much better emotionally, we're going to feel much better mentally, and we're also going to feel much better physically. So if emotions can't be thought away, what do they want, and how do we get rid of them? Well, what they want is to be acknowledged without judgment. They want to be acknowledged unconditionally, and unconditionally means without conditions. If you imagine a little child has just fallen over and they've hurt their knee, yes, they might want their knee rubbed, which will help with the physical pain, but what they really want is to be acknowledged, so that, you know, the child or the parent or whoever says, there, it's okay, you're going to be okay, and they give this kindness and this unconditional love. And this is what emotions want. But usually what has happened, especially with the people that I tend to work with, is that they've grown up in an environment where it was not safe to feel their emotions. It wasn't safe to express their emotions. And unconsciously, without even knowing it, they learned to suppress their emotions completely unconsciously and automatically. They just saw what was happening around them. They saw mummy not expressing her emotions, daddy not expressing his emotions, or also they saw those people expressing their emotions, such as the anger and the rage, or the depression and the sadness. And that was really scary as well, because those people were not coping well with their emotions. They didn't know how to manage their emotions. So we basically grow up unconsciously fearing our emotions, being afraid to feel our emotions, being afraid to be vulnerable. And so we hold everything in, and we just create this storage of emotions inside of us, but we don't know usually that we've done it. So emotions want to be acknowledged without judgment. So here's a very quick, easy exercise to start clearing negative emotions. So the first step is awareness, right? This may sound really obvious, but it's not. And I know this from my own experience, is that I had no idea that I was storing a whole heap of emotions inside of me that had built up to chronic fatigue. I had no idea I had anger and rage and sadness and grief and disappointment and hurt and shame and guilt and this whole raft of emotions stuck inside of me. I had no idea. I was completely oblivious, or we could say completely unconscious. So the first step is that we have to become aware. And I'm not saying we become aware of every single emotion we have inside of us in one go, because that would be overwhelming, and it's not how it happens anyway. But in the moment, on a daily basis, we need to become aware of how we're feeling. And especially if we're not feeling good, because the sign of having emotions trapped inside will be feeling things like we just feel a bit off, you feel grumpy, you feel impatient, and you're just not quite right. So you have to sit yourself down and become aware that there may be some emotions inside that are not being recognized. They just simply haven't been recognized. So the very first step is awareness. Then we need to be able to identify and label our emotions. We need to be able to identify, oh yeah, I'm feeling angry, or even rage, or frustrated, or annoyed, or sad, or upset, whatever the emotion is. We need to be able to identify and label that feeling, because different emotions are a different vibration. They're actually found even in different places of the body. They feel very different. So anger feels very different to sadness. Again, that may sound really obvious, but for some people, if they've spent a lifetime suppressing their emotions, they will be what I call emotionally illiterate. And so we literally have to start, like our ABCs, learning how to identify our emotions and then to identify what we're feeling. So that's the second step. The third step, once we've identified, is that we need to acknowledge. So this is where the energy can start to transform. And this is actually called internal alchemy. This is where we're literally alchemizing our emotions. And alchemy, the word alchemy means is all chemical, and our body literally is a chemistry factory. So when we start transforming our emotions, we literally start to change the chemical makeup of our hormones, of our cells, everything. It literally changes. It changes on a physical level, on a chemical level, a molecular level, cellular level, a quantum level. Everything changes. So the first step is to acknowledge. And so we're shining the light of our awareness on the emotions, and we're acknowledging them. And very close on the heels of acknowledgement comes acceptance. It's slightly different, but very close together. So we have to accept how we're feeling, because what most people are doing is they're resisting, and what we resist persists. So instead of resisting and pushing away, which is what we've trained ourselves very well to do, we have to start doing things differently, and we start accepting the fact that we feel this way. So in other words, for example, I acknowledge I feel angry, or I acknowledge I feel afraid. I acknowledge I feel sad. We need to shine a light on that emotional energy, on our feelings, and acknowledge and accept. And this literally starts to transform the energy inside our body. And I highly recommend that when you're doing this exercise, you need to stop whatever you're doing, and you need to sit yourself down and close your eyes and take the time to do it. Now, in my Smile Your Way to Inner Peace program, that is a much more complex way, or not complex, but a more comprehensive way of transforming this emotional energy. And I would sit myself down and do this technique every day, and I did it for about 7 years. And this is what transformed my ability to identify and label and acknowledge and accept and transform emotional energy inside of me. I literally did it every day for 7 years. So we have to create a new habit of noticing our emotions and our feelings. So we start to acknowledge and accept. And then the next step, slightly sort of further on, again, very close to acknowledging and accepting, we need to welcome those feelings. We literally hold our arms out mentally, if you like, and we embrace those feelings. Just like a little child wants to be embraced if they feel hurt, either physically or emotionally, we need to embrace and acknowledge and accept these feelings. And a really good and easy way to do that is simply to say, this feeling is welcome. I acknowledge this feeling. Do it with the eyes closed. Really important. Have your eyes closed. Once you've identified and labeled the feeling, you just say, this feeling is welcome. And you can substitute the word feeling for the emotion. So you could, for example, say, this anger is welcome. This sadness is welcome. This grief is welcome. This shame is welcome. We need to acknowledge it. And just by doing that, just by saying these phrases, you will notice, you will start to notice something changing inside of you. Because rather than resisting and pushing away, which just creates more resistance, like a tug of war, if you have a rope and, and there's a tug of war, once we start to acknowledge and welcome and accept, something starts to transform alchemically, inner alchemy, inside the body. And the only way to experience that and to know that what I'm talking about is true is to actually try it. Right? Now also remember to breathe. Okay, one of the things that we do to stop ourselves from feeling our emotions is that we stop breathing. Now I don't mean we stop breathing altogether, because then we keel over and die. What I mean is that we hold our breath, and we often become chest breathers. So we need to breathe from the abdomen, which is how babies breathe. So when we breathe in, we expand our belly outwards 360 degrees. And when we exhale, we just let that go. And when you breathe in, you can expand your belly in, and you can take that breath all the way up your spine into your shoulders. And then you exhale. And that allows you to connect your upper body with your lower body. Very important to breathe deeply. Now also another thing that you can do as you're acknowledging these emotions is that start to notice where the emotions are, where this emotional energy is in the body. Because emotions are not really so much in the head. They are actually generated inside the body, and they have a very close connection to various organs inside the body. For example, we say, I was livid with anger, because anger is generated in the liver. Or we say, my heart was filled with joy. That's obviously a positive emotion, but joy comes from the heart. So start to notice where the emotions are inside your body, and put your attention on the physical sensation of that emotion. Because when an emotion is generated inside the body, it literally creates a physical or energetic sensation. Because we can't separate the mind, the body, the physical body, the mind, the emotions, the spirit. They're all interconnected and overlapping. So emotions show up physically, energetically in the body, and we can feel them. And even though they may normally be mainly in the torso, we can also feel them in our extremities, in our hands and our arms and our legs. Now the good thing about noticing where the emotion is in the body is that A, you become more aware of what you're feeling, and the other thing is it's less scary for the mind to put its attention on a physical sensation rather than the emotion. It's the same thing. If it's a physical energetic sensation, it's still the emotional energy showing up physically, chemically in the body, and it's less scary for the mind to put its attention on something physical or energetic rather than the emotion. So again, as I said, remember to breathe. Remember to breathe. Now, there's more in-depth instructions that I give clients and when I go in my programs, but this is enough for now to get started. This will take you a long way. I remember once I was out shopping, and I can't remember what happened, but something happened and it triggered some emotion inside of me. And by the way, just remember that if you do get triggered by something, usually it's because that emotion is already inside of you. It's not so much the external situation that is the issue. It's the fact that that external situation has triggered the emotion that has been sitting inside of you for years. Remember that. So something had happened. I was upset. I'd had some upset triggered, and my old me would have just suppressed it and carried on with the day, just swallowed it down and carried on. But I knew I didn't want to do that. And I found a little quiet spot because I was outside in a shopping place. And I found a quiet spot and I closed my eyes and I breathed. And I just asked myself, what am I feeling? I identified the feeling. It was upset or you know, something like that. It was upset, disappointment, that type of emotion. And I just gave myself permission to feel. And yes, I cried a bit. But because I took 2 minutes to do that, that emotion dissolved and disappeared. And it was gone. And then I carried on shopping. Now, if I hadn't done that, I would have spent the rest of the day feeling really grumpy and annoyed and whatever else. So we can transform our emotions literally in seconds and minutes. But the key is we have to be mindful, we have to be aware, we have to have a strategy and a technique to dissolve that emotional energy. We have to take the time to do it. We have to be disciplined to do it. And we have to be willing to feel our feelings. We have to be willing to do things differently. Now, also, in general, we're going to have to work on clearing our subconscious patterning and the causal factors of all this emotional patterning. And obviously, that's not the topic of this webinar. That's the work that I tend to do in my online programs and with clients on a one-to-one basis. But we need to do that. You know, if emotions keep being triggered again and again and again and again and again, then there's a reason for it. And we need to get to the cause, and we need to clear the cause. We need to clear the patterning. And we also need to practice bringing our body out of the stress response on a daily basis. In other words, we need to learn how to calm our mind and our body on a daily basis. And that will be things like meditation, yoga, qigong, that sort of thing, right? So we need to start bringing those practices into our life on a daily basis, and that will also help a lot with our emotional mastery. So I hope this has been helpful, and if you want to know more information, then you can check out my website, kimknighthealth.com. I have lots of really useful self-help online programs. I have my membership site, monthly trainings, monthly Q&A sessions. So go check it out, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.